If you're a gardener, by now your seeds have been planted. If the conditions were right, you were rewarded with a bountiful harvest. Growing sustainability is the driving force behind a series of mini grants designed to help West Virginia communities become more environmentally, economically, and socially sustainable. The DEP's Greg Adolphson joins us now with a look at this year's winners. And Greg, these community organizations are looking to use these grants as seed money for some pretty ambitious projects.
That's right, Kathy. We're here in Charleston at the Group Sages Urban Micro Farm. This project was one of 4 grants awarded this year by West Virginia Sustainable Communities in partnership with the DEP, the West Virginia Community Development Hub, and the Claude Worthington Benedum Foundation. SAGE stands for Sustainable Agriculture Entrepreneurs, and while this may look like a community garden, it's anything but. This tiny farm in the middle of Charleston is the first step in what organizers hope becomes a booming business.
We are not producing gardeners, we are producing micro farmers, and this is really a job training opportunity because in the state of West Virginia alone, the food economy is worth $7 billion. Currently, West Virginians only own $6 million of that.
SAGE is a farm incubator and is using its grant to hire an agriculture consultant to teach participants how to maximize yields. Participants in the program also learn how to market their crops to meet the demand for locally grown food. Restaurants, caterers, farmers markets, and organizers say the demand is real.
These are all herb pallets. That's probably been the #1 demanded product from our end markets, our herbs, fresh herbs, right? Because they're hard to keep fresh over a long travel distance and they're expensive. So if we can shorten that supply chain, increase access, that's a huge possibility for growing that local food economy.
But when the demand for what you're producing dries up, then it's time to plant something new. And that's the situation in Richwood. Once a booming lumber town along the banks of the Cherry River, Richwood has fallen on hard times. Its population has dropped from a peak of around 10,000 during the boom times of the early 20th century to just over 2,000 at the last census. Community leaders in Richwood are hoping to take advantage of its proximity to the Monongahela National Forest and a nearby rail trail system by finding ways to make the town more walker and bicycle friendly.
What we're looking for is to come up with some concrete numbers for what it would take to connect the city from one end to the other, whether that's a few bridges, and then we can get estimates on exactly how much it would cost to construct such a bridge or do some paving, do some strategic widening of roads. We're looking at just getting a real feasible number and breaking the walkability improvement into parts that we could then approach granting groups, local folks, whatever we can do to raise the money to actually put it in play.
And by making the downtown more accessible, the hope is that niche businesses will sprout up and put Richwood back on the map as a tourism, hospitality, and retirement hub.
I moved here 5 years ago and I love it. And I came here because I wanted to, not because I knew anybody or had a relative. I just came because I wanted to. And there are a lot of people that would like to live in a small town, safe place that has wonderful opportunities like we do with the outdoors.
The growing cost of utilities is putting a serious squeeze on another small town's plans to keep a former school serving as its community center. Arnettsville Elementary School is currently home to a branch of the Morgantown Public Library, a food pantry, a meeting place, and dozens of programs that serve area students and seniors alike.
It really is a multi-purpose facility. And what the Sustainable Communities Grant will allow us to do is to do an energy audit and heating system analysis because we desperately need to reduce our heating costs.
Built in 1955, the building has its original boiler and radiators. Originally coal-fired, it was converted to fuel oil in the 1970s. It's old, inefficient, and expensive to maintain, and time is running out to find a viable alternative solution.
We've looked at trying to request funding for energy improvements in the past, and without the really good numbers, that's a hard thing to do. That's where this will be really critical to get that analysis so we can write some better proposals.
And that's often the stumbling block.
It's more often than you realize because a lot of our communities just don't have that little jump start. And in order to get the bigger funding, they have to have these little things done, all their ducks in a row, in order to actually get the funding on bigger projects. Sometimes a feasibility assessment is all they need to get that jump start.
Jamie Durant is Program Manager for West Virginia Sustainable Communities.
Long term, we hope to basically work ourselves out of a job. If things go well, then eventually West Virginia will be a sustainable state, not just a series of sustainable communities, and our efforts will have come full circle.
One big key to the program is that these communities take what they've learned and teach it to other communities throughout the state. In fact, West Virginia Sustainable Communities has a showcase every year for communities to present their information. Kathy, these are small grants, typically around $5,000, but what we've seen is that these projects have big results.
Like the success they've had at the Wild Ramp in Huntington, one of last year's grant recipients. Thanks, Greg. The other winner of this year's mini grant, Energy Efficient West Virginia, plans to use its funding to train additional people to do energy assessments. Last year, the group collaborated with the West Virginia Department of Education to research energy use in schools and found a potential savings of $20 million a year through improved efficiency. The group is looking for low or even no cost opportunities for schools to save energy.